Okay, so get ready for this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into, well, one of the oldest legal codes out there, the Code of Hammurabi.
Oh, yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, but here's the twist.
Okay.
We're going to try to see it through, get this, the lens of AI.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, that's a really fascinating thought experiment. I mean, imagine an AI, with that pure logic and the way it can process information so fast, encountering this ancient text.
right.
What would it even make of Hammurabi's laws? Like, where would it see similarities to our legal systems today, and where would it just be totally baffled?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, we're talking about a code carved in stone, right, around 2250 BC. It's like a snapshot of Babylonian society.
Yeah.
And we have this amazing book, The Code of Hammurabi, King of Babylon, which lays it all out. I mean, it's like handing an AI a user manual for an ancient civilization.
That's a great way to put it. And just like an AI would analyze a complex data set, right, it could go through these 282 laws, finding the patterns, connections. It could even categorize the laws in ways that might surprise us. For
Yeah.
example, instead of just family law or criminal law, an AI might create categories based on, like, the logic of the punishments or the social structures that the laws reinforce.
Oh, so instead of thinking like a modern lawyer, it's thinking like, well, an AI looking for those algorithms underneath it all.
Precisely, exactly. Take the idea of justice, for example.
Yeah.
Hammurabi, in the preface, states his goal is to enlighten the land and to further the welfare of the people, right? But how would an AI, without like human emotions and cultural context, define justice?
Yeah, I mean, would it even see justice as a relevant concept? Or would it just see it as a set of rules to optimize for a stable society?
That's a great question. I mean, an AI might focus on the efficiency of the code, its ability to maintain order and resolve disputes.
Right.
It might even find the eye for an eye principle, quite logical. Straightforward way to, deter crime and maintain that kind of balance.
Yeah, but wouldn't that ignore the whole idea of rehabilitation or the fact that someone might commit a crime out of desperation, not malice?
Exactly. That's where the AI's perspective could really challenge our assumptions about justice.
Hmm.
It might force us to confront the limitations of a purely retributive system and think about alternative approaches that consider, the complexity of human behavior and motivation.
Wow. And this is all from just the preface. What happens when our AI starts digging into the actual laws? It's like giving a supercomputer a crash course in ancient Babylonian social dynamics.
Right. Well, let's look at one of the more, shall we say, striking aspects of the code, the way it very explicitly addresses social hierarchy. You've got freemen, slaves, women. Each group has a specific set of rights and punishments under the law.
Right. Yeah. It's like the code is saying your mileage may vary depending on your social status.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. An AI analyzing this would immediately grasp this idea of a hierarchical society. Take Law 205, for instance. Okay, so a slave who strikes a free man, his ear is cut off. But if a son strikes his father, the punishment is different.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So an AI could deduce that striking a person of higher social standing brings a harsher penalty, regardless of, how severe the act itself was.
So for an AI, it's all about understanding those inputs and outputs. Like if social status equals high, then punishment equals severe. But wouldn't an AI also see the inherent unfairness baked into that system?
That is a fascinating point. I mean, an AI programmed to focus on logic and consistency might flag this as a flaw in the system. It might even suggest other models of justice that prioritize equality and individual rights, regardless of social status.
Yeah, it's like the AI is saying, "Hey, Hammurabi, your code is pretty efficient at keeping things in order, but could use some work on the fairness front."
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And this is really where the value of this whole thought experiment lies. By looking at the Code of Hammurabi, we can get a fresh perspective on our own legal systems and our own ethical frameworks. We can start questioning assumptions that we might not even realize we're making.
Okay, so we've got this AI. It's starting to get the basics of Hammurabi's world, but then it hits this section on contracts, and suddenly things get a lot more, well, relatable.
Yeah, contracts they're essentially logic puzzles, right?
Yeah.
Agreements between parties with defined terms and conditions. An AI, with its understanding of logic and language processing, would likely be pretty good at analyzing these ancient contracts.
Yeah, and I bet it would be fascinated by all the weird situations the code addresses. Like, what happens if you hire an ox and it dies from, get this, a god stroke?
Ah, yes, Law 249, a perfect example. From an AI's perspective, this raises some really interesting questions.
Right.
First, it shows that even in ancient Babylon, they had a concept of unpredictable events, what we might call acts of God, that could void a contract.
Right.
But would an AI, with its purely logical mindset, even understand the idea of a God stroke? Wouldn't it need to understand religious beliefs to make sense of that?
That's a great point. It's like the AI hits a bug in the code, something that doesn't compute, and suddenly it has to figure out, okay, what do I do with this?
Exactly, and that's where things get really, really interesting. Because this seemingly simple clause from an ancient legal code, it could reveal a fundamental challenge in AI development, which is how do we teach AI to deal with ambiguity, to deal with ideas that, defy easy categorization or logical explanation?
So it's not just about teaching AI to think, but teaching it to understand that sometimes things just don't make sense, right?
Yeah.
That the world isn't always black and white.
Precisely. And honestly, that's a lesson that, we humans could stand to be reminded of every now and then as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It seems like, we're seeing a pattern here. The Code of Hammurabi, it's fascinating in its detail and its logic, but it also kind of shows us the limits of a purely rational approach to law, to governing.
Yeah, it's like those terms and conditions nobody reads but we all agree to, right?
Right.
There's always that one sneaky clause that could trip you up.
Exactly. And for an AI, that sneaky clause might be, well, anything that falls outside of its programming, its understanding of the world. Which brings us to another really fascinating part of the code. Its attention to property rights.
Okay.
I mean, it's meticulous.
Okay, so we're going from contracts to real estate law. I mean,
Yeah.
Hammurabi was really laying down the law, literally.
He was. And for an AI, this section would be like a gold mine of data. The code, it covers everything. Land ownership, inheritance, responsibilities of tenants, even gardeners. It's like a complete system for how the economy works.
So our AI is basically getting a master class in ancient Babylonian economics, huh?
Exactly. Imagine an AI going through these laws, mapping out the flow of goods and services, figuring out who the key players in the economy were.
Right.
It could even model the impact of these laws on wealth distribution, social mobility.
It's like feeding the entire Babylonian economy into a giant AI simulator.
Right. And the insights could be incredibly valuable. For example, the code talks about irrigation, outlines the responsibilities of people sharing water resources. And AI could analyze those provisions, and determine, did this lead to fair distribution or did it favor certain groups?
So the AI could actually check Hammurabi's work, see if his laws really were furthering the welfare of the people, like he claimed.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. What if the AI discovers that certain laws, even though they seem logical, actually keep inequality going, or they create these unintended consequences?
Like maybe Hammurabi thought he was being fair, but his code had these hidden biases that only an AI could see.
It's possible, absolutely. And that brings up a really critical question. If we're going to use AI to help us design legal systems or even govern societies, how do we make sure those systems are truly just and equitable?
It's like we need to teach AI to be a philosopher, not just a lawyer or an economist.
That's a great analogy, really. We need AI that can not only understand the letter of the law, but get those underlying principles of justice, fairness, human dignity.
Okay, so we've got AI. It's learned about property, contracts, even a bit of social dynamics. But there's one area where I think things might get tricky. Criminal justice.
Yes. The code's famous eye for an eye principle. This is where the AI's logic, might really clash with our human understanding of crime and punishment.
Yeah, because for an AI, it's all about input-output, right?
Yeah.
If you commit a crime, boom, you get the corresponding punishment. Case closed.
That's it. But we as humans, we get that there are, mitigating factors, special circumstances, even the possibility of remorse, rehabilitation. These are concepts that an AI might struggle with without really understanding human psychology, human emotion.
But couldn't an AI also offer a valuable perspective here? Like, it could analyze crime data, find patterns that might help us prevent crime in the first place, or develop better rehab programs.
Absolutely. That's the exciting potential, right? It can help us see things we might miss, challenge those assumptions we have, and develop more effective, more humane solutions. But, and it's a big but, we have to use this technology wisely, ethically, with a real understanding of its limits.
Okay, so we've got an AI. It's learned about property, contracts, punishment, basically ancient Babylonian law 101. But what's the takeaway for us here in the 21st century?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the main thing we can take away is this. The Code of Hammurabi, even though it's old and has its issues, it gives us this amazing look into how humans thought about law and government has changed over time.
It's like we've got this time capsule of legal ideas, and we're using AI to open it.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
And by looking at this code through the eyes of an AI, we can get a fresh perspective on our own legal systems, maybe spot some of our own biases, and even start to imagine new possibilities for a future that's more just, more fair for everyone.
So we've gone back in time, looked at this Code of Hammurabi through the eyes of an AI, even found some biases maybe hidden in these old laws. What an adventure.
It has been quite a journey, and I think the most striking thing is how this ancient code, even with its issues, still speaks to us today, you know?
Yeah, it really does. It's like Hammurabi was wrestling with the same big questions we still ask ourselves. How do we create a just society? How do we balance individual rights with keeping things orderly? How do we make sure the laws are fair for everybody?
Exactly. And those are the exact questions we need to keep in mind as we develop more and more sophisticated AI systems. Because AI, with its ability to look at data, see patterns, even make decisions, it could completely change our legal systems, our whole concept of governing.
So it's not just about AI enforcing the laws we have now, but helping us to actually create better laws, right? From the ground up.
Exactly. Just imagine an AI that could go through tons of legal data, find the parts where laws are unclear, maybe even contradict each other, and then come up with new solutions based on fairness, efficiency, basic human dignity.
It's like having this AI legal advisor, always working to make our legal systems more just, more fair.
That's a great way to think about it. And this is where it gets really exciting, I think, because AI could help us move past the limits of the legal systems we've designed, which, let's face it, are often shaped by biases from the past, political compromises.
So instead of just repeating the past, AI could help us create something totally new, a forward-thinking legal system.
Absolutely. And this isn't just sci-fi stuff either. I mean, researchers are already building AI that can draft legal documents, analyze contracts, even predict how a court case might turn out.
But wouldn't that mean giving a lot of power to machines? I mean, how do we make sure that these AI systems are working with our values, that they put human well-being first?
That's the key question. We can't just assume AI will be automatically good or that it will always act in our best interests. We have to be really active in shaping how AI develops, making sure it follows ethical principles, and that humans are still in control.
So it's not about replacing human judges and lawyers with AI, but about a partnership where AI helps us make more informed, more equitable decisions.
That's it. AI has this incredible power for good, but it's on us to use it wisely, responsibly. We have to know what our goals are, set those ethical guidelines, and make sure AI is accountable to us, to human society.
It's almost like we're writing this new code, for the AI age, taking some inspiration from Hammurabi's text, but also adding our own values, what we want to see in the future.
And who knows, maybe thousands of years from now, someone will look back at what we're doing with the same kind of wonder that we feel when we look at Hammurabi's code today. It's amazing to think about.
Well, listeners, this is the end of our deep dive. We've explored this ancient legal code. We've thought about AI consciousness. We've even thought about the future of law and government in this world that's becoming more and more shaped by tech. What a ride.
And as we move forward, it's crucial that we keep having these conversations, asking those tough questions, and working together to make sure that AI is a force for good in our world. That's the key.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.